Hey guys, I'm in the back room down here at ZIMM'S Guitars, and I have a very old amplifier that was made by Tony Krank. And then I've got my buddy Patrick's down here today, and Patrick worked with Tony for like 12 years, right?
That's the word on the street.
That's the word on the street. So I got this amp, and it was traded into me probably about close to probably 2 years ago. And I just had it setting in the back room, and I just kind of carried it around with me. And it was noisy, and I knew it had potential. But finally, Patrick walked into my store a couple of weeks ago. And after talking to him for a few minutes and him telling me that he knows all about Tony and he knows all about these amps, I had him service this amp. So he's going to walk us through this thing a little bit and tell us what he did to it, and try to tell us exactly, you know, what Tony was thinking when he put this amp together. That's good. That might be a tough one to answer. But, and then he's going to play his guitar through it for a little bit here. So here we go.
So what I'll first explain is what this was and what Tony made out of it. So this started life as a Marshall JCM 800, and at some point, I don't know what exactly happened to the original amplifier, but when Tony got started with it, all that it was a chassis and a couple transformers.
And these were the 4 inputs right here, huh?
Well, it looks to me
kind of like a Plexi had 4.
No, it looks to me like this started as a JCM 800.
Okay.
And what I can't really tell because there's nothing marked on the tags in there. Everything's all been
Tony
removed.
went through and he pretty much put all kinds of rebranded the whole thing.
That's exactly right.
Uh-huh.
So I believe this was just a 2-input JCM 800, and then these other holes were put in later so Tony could add a clean channel to this amplifier. And that's what this foot switch does here. It switches between a clean and a dirty channel. But just to back up a little bit, so like I said, when Tony started with this thing, it was just a chassis and a couple transformers, and he hand wired a point-to-point circuit on the inside with terminal strips. So it's just components attached to a series of terminal strips all the way across.
There's no circuit board in this thing.
There's no circuit board in there. It's like a jungle in there.
Nice.
So there was a couple of issues with it, being that when it was originally rewired, when Tony made it up, there was just some insufficient ground connections made with the amplifier, and that's where a lot of the problems that
it was just kind of noisy.
Yeah, that it was having. It was noisy and popping and cracking. A little bit of hum would come and go. So I just went through the whole thing, and I made sure that all of those ground connections on the terminal strips were nice. They were earthed, you know, and they were nice and solid. Mm-hmm. Replaced the input jack, put in some new fresh tubes.
The input jack right here got replaced?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then this second input jack right here is for the 1-button foot switch.
Yep.
I never knew that all the time I had it. Yeah, and I never knew this was any kind of a clean channel. I didn't know you could put a 1-button foot switch in there and go to the clean. So now these knobs control your clean channel.
Correct.
Crazy.
And Tony's got a lot of one-off amps that are constructed very similar. You can find old Sovtech MIG heads that he rewired and did in this exact same way. This one actually was changed. It was formerly a 100-watt JCM 800. Now it is a 50-watt crankified Tony design. So
super cool. What year, off the top of your head, what year do you think he did this?
This was probably done in the early 2000s. That was just before crank amplification started.
They became big, didn't they?
They got really big. Yeah, I started with them in 2000 in December of 2003, the same month that Dimebag Darrell was taken from us. And you know, if you know anything about crank amps, you know the whole story of Dimebag with that company. And the company just exploded from that time forward.
As soon as Dime started using crank amps?
Yeah, when Dime he was playing in Damage Plan at that time, Pantera was already a thing of the past.
Right.
And
because back then it was all Randall. until he came across.
That's right. He was a solid state guy.
Yeah, until he came across these cranks.
And it's a crazy story about how he came across the cranks. He was reading back in the early days of Krank, not long after this amp was built. Tony used to take out ads in the back pages of Guitar World magazine.
Okay.
And Dime was hanging out with Rita at his place, and he was flipping through Guitar World, and he saw an ad, a quarter-page ad, in the back of Guitar World magazine, and he was just taken back by the name Krank. Like, who?
Crank it up, man! What a
kind of-
great name.
What kind of crazy guy
Led
calls his
Zeppelin
amplifier
was a great
Krank?
name, and it worked.
That's
Crank
right.
amps. What a great name.
So on a whim, just because of the name, Dime called up the company and he ordered one of the amps.
Okay.
He's, like you said, he's a Randall solid state guy. He'd never been a tube amp guy, but he got one of these early Revolution designs, which is basically what's the circuit that's in this amplifier,
Okay.
and he loved it.
Mhm.
He couldn't believe. He wanted to know what we did to it
Mhm.
to make it sound that way. He didn't think that we could do it again,
Mm-hmm.
so he bought a second one.
And it sounded badass.
And it
just like
sounded
the first
badass
one.
too. Next thing you know, damage plans hitting the road, and he's coming by the factory and loading up the tour van with crank stacks. Yep. Sadly, the same crank stacks that he was taking from us in front of. So
Let's look at the front of the amp and kind of go through what some of these knobs are and what is going on in the front of the
okay,
amp.
so this is basically the same kind of setup as a Krank Revolution amplifier.
Okay.
That model. So you got a gain, a sweep control, your bass, mid, and treble.
Okay.
Master volume, and a presence control, which all of those are pretty self-explanatory, except for this sweep function.
Okay.
The sweep kind of adjusts the operating range of the tone controls. So think of the sweep as moving this tone stack,
Oh,
to
wow.
either to the lower or the higher range. So
Now, Marshall JCMs didn't have any kind of a sweep on there, on the Marshalls, did
that's
they?
right. That's why you always saw the bass
And
control.
did they have a
on it.
presence on a Marshall?
Yes.
Okay, they had the
absolutely.
presence.
They had a presence, but they didn't have this sweep control. And this really changes it up. It makes the amp much more versatile than what you would normally find with a Marshall like that.
Okay, well, I'm going to hand you a guitar, and
Careful.
you can shred through it and go through a couple of the knobs, and let's get a little listen to this thing.
All right. You'll really hear the low end come up as you adjust the sweep control to the left. And this is with the gain at halfway. So there's plenty of more crazy to be had.
Go ahead and click over into the clean channel. Let's see a little bit of what's going on with the clean. Is the presence and everything still active in the clean channel?
No, the clean, all of these, when you switch over to the clean channel, which just consists of these two knobs right here, the clean channel has a volume and a tone,
Okay.
and that's it. So
And a lot of loud. Wow.
a lot of loud. And these clean channels on the crank amps, they take pedals like a dream. So if you've got a bunch of dirt pedals that you like to use in front of the amp,
Right.
you can plug them right up and run them through that clean channel. And
Is there is there an effects loop in this amp?
no, there's no effects loop.
Okay.
No.
So everything goes through the front. if you want to add reverb or delay or something.
Yep, got to have an external unit for that, and there's no loop. Everything will have to go into the front panel here. The back panel's got 3 connections back there for speakers, a 4, 8, and a 16 ohm, and the power cord. That's it. That's the amp.
Patrick, thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, I want to thank Dane for having me down here at ZIMM'S Guitars today. And if anybody out there has a Krank amp that's in need of repair, I've taken amps from around the world. You can find a link to how to get hold of me below the video here. Thanks.
Thanks, Patrick.
I think what would be some good licks to do.